So welcome everybody to the Q3 Embedded Analytics User Group meeting. Pretty good agenda today. Hopefully, as always, glad to see you back again for second meeting of the year, and looking forward to keeping things going with meetings every quarter moving forward. So agenda for today, we've got 3 presentations queued up. We'll have Derek Austin starting us off with some information about portal integration. Then Graham will be talking about their integration of Ask Data into their application, which is pretty cool follow-up from our presentation last time from Ruhab Marcus from Tableau about Ask Data kind of in general. And then I'll wrap up and talk about one of the projects that we did earlier this year as the COVID things were starting out, and our ultimate integration of Tableau Public into one of our offerings that was delivered out to the public, which was kind of a new and interesting thing for us. And then some of the work to make that an automated process so that we don't have to update and publish information manually every day as the updates come through. And then we'll do some wrap up. So, Bob, anything to add? Anything we need to be thinking about?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I would just like to reemphasize that the more participation we have in the community, the better our content's going to be. So if anybody has stories they'd like to share or would like to get involved with maybe doing a presentation or a use case, certainly email myself or Jeff. We'd be definitely interested in knowing that.
Absolutely, and our information will be in the wrap-up section of the slides. And you know, something else, if you want to chat that to us, that'd be great. We'd be happy to contact you. If you can just put some email information in the chat and send it to me and or Bob or the panelists, that would be great. One other housekeeping item, there's a Q&A section that's built into Zoom, and that'll be the best place for you to track any questions that you have for us about the user group or for the panelists as they deliver their presentation. We'll look to do some Q&A after each presentation, and then we'll try and save some time at the end for more general things or any questions that we got missed along the way. Everybody's phones will be muted and video is turned off, so that Q&A and chat are the best ways to contact us and let us know if you're having any issues or anything that you'd like to follow up on. So, all right, that's it for now, and I will turn it over to Derek, and we'll get going with his presentation of his work with portals at Interworks. Derek, you can go ahead. I'll stop sharing, and you can take over whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Get my screen sharing here real quick. All right. Thanks for the time, everyone. My name is Derek Austin, and today we're going to talk a lot about some embedded analytics use cases that we've ran into at Interworks. Before we start, though, I'd love to tell you a little bit about Interworks. Interworks is a company that focuses on Tableau and basically everything in the ecosystem around it. Interworks was founded back in the 90s, actually, as an IT company. And originally, we did your standard IT work, installing servers, networking, that type of stuff. But over the years, that has evolved substantially. We still do that type of stuff, but as you guys are well aware, data analysis has become this huge thing. It's become more important, and Interworks has really become an expert on it as well. We're actually Tableau's oldest partner, and we've been recognized many times, including Tableau's 2018 Innovative Solution of the Year, which is an embedded analytics product that I work on. As I mentioned, I am Derek Austin. I've been with Interworks since 2013. I came with a background in web application development, and for a long time I spent time consulting clients on Tableau Desktop, Tableau Server, data warehousing. But as you guys all know, embedded analytics became huge with Tableau. And so I actually began leading a new branch of Interworks focused on portals for Tableau, which is our embedded analytics solution, in 2016, and I've been doing that ever since. And so through that, I've ran into a lot of really cool use cases, and I'm going to share those a little bit today. Just kind of kicking off, I'd love to talk a little bit about art. This is my intro to talking about embedded analytics, because art just really resonates so well with an embedded solution. So specifically, let's talk about this Van Gogh painting from 1889. We all recognize this. Even if you aren't interested in art, I bet you can even name this painting. This is Starry Night. This is one of Van Gogh's most famous paintings, and it's something that can be found all over the place. In fact, I have a coworker that has this painting on their cubicle, just a few cubicles down when we're in the office. However, Van Gogh has this other painting that you might not recognize. This is Poppy Flowers, and this is much less known. In fact, this is a painting that Van Gogh painted around the same time. You can see it was actually before Starry Night, just a couple of years. And it captures the beauty of some poppies in France. It has a really cool story behind it. But unlike the first painting, no one really recognizes it. No one sees this or enjoys it. In fact, it isn't even available for us to do that. While this painting was on display at a museum in Cairo, it actually went missing twice. They did a very poor job of security, apparently, but currently its whereabouts are completely unknown. So in front of us, we have these two Van Gogh masterpieces. One is enjoyed by millions at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, but the other painting, it's virtually unknown. So what's the difference? It's not a matter of subject or paint used or even quality. They're both painted by the same author, the same painter. And while those things really can affect the outcome, in this particular case, that isn't the biggest difference. The biggest difference between the two is ease of access. So like a painting, dashboard quality, when we build out those Tableau dashboards, it isn't the only thing affecting our dashboard usage. If a painting like Starry Night was stored in a basement for years and years and years, or in the case of the poppy flower painting, stolen and hidden from the world, it's more or less useless. If your dashboard's never accessed or never found, your work went to waste. It doesn't matter that you spent 6 months putting all of the bells and whistles you could into it. If your audience can't find your dashboard, it's completely worthless. It doesn't matter if you color-coded it to match your company's corporate colors. It doesn't matter that you emailed it to them 5 times. It doesn't matter that you spent 6 months finding the perfect granularity of data. It's just time wasted. But with embedded analytics, we can make sure that this time doesn't go to waste, that it's used effectively. And so how do we resolve this? We like to think of it as framing the experience. And so we want to give our users experiences that make sense to them. Your boss, your CEO, or your clients, they're not Tableau developers, and so we can't really expect them to learn the Tableau server interface. As easy as that might seem to us, we need an interface that makes sense to them. And so you should custom tailor your Tableau dashboard consumption to your users, not force your users to tailor themselves to Tableau. So with that, embedded analytics is something that we always aim to make this simple and easy area where people can come and gather their data. It's tied into existing company marketing and processes, and it really lowers the barrier of entry. And with that, it helps us surface those unfound reports and gives people this really singular targeted area to gather data regardless of the source reporting system. And so how does that look? I have a couple of examples I wanted to run through here. Some of these are just kind of cool use cases, others are more visually appealing, but let me hop over to a browser session here. This is a fake portal that we put together for Acme University, a fake university that we came up with just to kind of demo what you could do with a portal. As you can see here, it's something that's very custom tailored to this brand. It has their logo, it has their navigation, their colors, has some books across the top and some dashboards. And you can see it's very custom for that. We've even given it a little title here to kind of intro people to the portal. The navigation, the structure, the look and feel, it's something that makes sense to them. If we hop over a tab, we have a completely different experience, but it's still Tableau. It's still embedded analytics. Once you take it to a website, the world is up to you. You can make it whatever you want it to be. On this homepage here, we actually have a bunch of dashboards listed, and something that's really cool about this is this not only Tableau, sometimes it is, most of the time it is, but if you have those legacy reporting platforms, you can actually link off to them in your embedded analytics solution as well. I know just about every client I consult with, at least, and I would venture to guess that you guys are the same, also has flat files wandering around, old Excel reports, PDFs, PowerPoint, you name it. You can try and get rid of that stuff, but there's always something hanging out there. And so you can actually include it in the same place and integrate it so that they don't have to go to one place for one set of reports, to another place for a different set of reports. We want our users to be able to get everything they need just right at their fingertips. And then over time, you can convert more and more of that stuff to Tableau, which is what we all know and love. Some really cool things about this one, though. There's a couple of really cool features that I want to pull up in here. The first one is this federal spending dashboard. So kind of talking about Tableau and integration with other systems. You can actually integrate Tableau when you're in an embedded environment with other things, right? We have these cool JavaScript hooks. We have the ability to filter our Tableau dashboard to pull that data back out. And so how does that represent itself? Often, we just have people embedding a singular dashboard on a page. But sometimes there's a need for something else. And so this is actually a really cool example of that. We have Tableau on the right-hand side, and we have D3 on the left-hand side. It's a JavaScript-based visualization engine. It takes a little bit of coding to get in there, but you know, it does this fancy chart that Tableau might not do. And so you can actually click into this, and you can drill down, and you can filter and change that Tableau dashboard using this branched out tree from D3 on the left-hand side. And obviously, this could be a lot of different things. It could be other systems. It could be two Tableau dashboards working together. A lot of really cool use cases for that. Another really interesting thing I have on here is our write back demo. And so just clicking into that real quick. This has a Tableau dashboard along the top of the page once it loads, which, by the way, this is a cool loading screen. In a lot of our dashboards, we've replaced the standard Tableau loading screen with something custom. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but now that the write back has come up, we have this very simple dashboard. It has some bar charts, it has a line, but this is to show off the fact that you can actually use a web page, the bottom half of this, to talk back to Tableau. So if I have an analyst that's coming in and they're looking at what should I forecast next January for, they can go ahead and update these numbers, hit enter, and we'll actually update this Tableau dashboard. It's using a live connection behind the scenes and pull in that new data and surface it and show it right there alongside the numbers that they're updating, that they're changing. And so a really cool use case for that. We actually have other ways of doing this as well. And I'll pull those up in a second. Actually, just hopping back over here. I have it right here. This admissions and enrollment has another really cool way of doing write back. So basically, we show a line chart on this one. It could be anything. And we attach to the marks within the dashboard using Tableau. And as you guys know, with Tableau's embedded analytics, you can actually tie into these types of events. And so when I click on a point, it asks me, hey, what do you want to say about this point? And I can say, test comment, or I can say, hey, sales are going up here. We should check into that. And then I can give it a type. But really, the point is, you can attach this data to data already in Tableau and then blend the two together. So you now have a chart that has not only your sales data, but it has your comments. In this case, I've just put in a tooltip, but it's a piece of data. And so you can do whatever you need to with it. Just talking about the custom loading animations a little bit more while we're here, I'll refresh this page. These are just a really kind of a gimmicky thing. Honestly, it started out as somebody that had a really slow loading dashboard. And they said, hey, Derek, how can we make our dashboards faster? Well, they had a lot of granularity in their data, and they needed a whole bunch of marks on the screen and really just super granular data. So it was going to be slow. And what we did is we actually put in this loading screen with their product images, and we put like loading now underneath it. It actually dropped the number of people complaining about the dashboard speed. This one's pretty quick, and so it doesn't really show it off, but imagine your dashboard takes 15 seconds or so, right? If you distract people while that's happening, sometimes they don't realize that it takes a little bit longer to load. While we're in this portal, I'm going to click into one additional dashboard, this school district overview. It shows off some other really cool things that we've done in the portal. One of those is tutorials. Because embedded analytics is a web page, right? You can do a lot of really cool stuff in it that doesn't necessarily come in Tableau out of the box. And so one of those that I love to do is actually a tutorial telling our users exactly how to use the dashboard. And the way we've set this one up, I think it shows up the first 5 times the user sees the dashboard, and then they have the ability to bring it back. But you can see here, it tells us, hey, this is a district filter. We can change this to see which districts are located in the map. The user can click next, and it highlights a different portion of the screen, tells them a little bit about that. And then similarly, they just kind of go through this tutorial until they reach the end, and then they know how to use the dashboard. Obviously, our dashboard should be easy enough for people to pick up and use just out of the box. But we all know that's not the case. Sometimes we have to clarify the KPIs, we have to clarify how to use it, and the tutorials can really help facilitate that. That might be a pop-up modal like we had here. It could even just be a page that you put in your embedded environment. But there's a lot of ways that you can actually dive into that and engage your users that you can't do with native Tableau. Embedded analytics gives you those capabilities. Other things we have here, so the tutorial, you can bring it back up with that button. We have tie-ins to the standard Tableau stuff as well. So we have the ability to full screen this dashboard, to reset filters. The JavaScript API has tons and tons of things that you can do to interact with that dashboard. If I click on download, a lot of the export options just come straight over, right? But because this is that custom environment, we can kind of pick and choose which ones we have. It might not make sense for my users to get the whole dashboard or the data, but maybe it makes sense for them to be able to export an image or a PDF. Using Tableau's APIs, you can really narrow that down to your experience, to what makes sense for you. And you can actually build onto that as well. And so with that, I'm going to actually transition to a different portal, this Enterburger one. Pull up our drive-through sales here. One of my favorite additions is something that we call the report builder. And this is something you guys could build out very easily as well. Basically, it just takes snapshots of your dashboards. You bring this up and you can see I actually have 2 snapshots here. I'll click capture. I'm going to have a third one added. I could actually wander around the portal collecting these. And as I do, I'm building out this report. And this report can be custom tailored. It can be filtered. It can have various parameters applied. It can have multiple dashboards. And then when I want it, I can actually click export. And then I get the option between a PDF or a PowerPoint. All of this is built using Tableau's awesome APIs, just kind of pairing a couple together so that we have everything we need. I can actually email this off. If I have a recipient, like maybe my boss needs this report and I'm pulling it for him, I can give him some text, recipient, report name, but I can actually also schedule this. So think subscriptions, but multiple dashboards, custom tailored to your filters, your parameters, and all manageable in a simple interface here. It's very possible that this report needs to show up in my inbox every week. If I have to go to 5 different dashboards every week, that's a chunk of time. But using the power of embedded analytics, we can actually make that much more sustainable. And so it just automatically shows up for me. Another really interesting thing about embedded analytics, in my opinion, is the ability to kind of filter out even holistic items from Tableau. And so we're all familiar with custom views in Tableau. It's very easy for me to name this view, to click, hey, I want a public view, to build that out. I cannot tell you how many clients have seen that and said, wow, that's really cool. But I hate the fact that my clients can name something and make it public. What if they put their client name in there? What if they just put in something bogus? What if they fill it up with junk, right? And so you could actually leave out the fact that that users have the ability to make this public. In fact, with this particular portal, with you guys, it would be some coding, right? But we can actually toggle that off with just a flip of a switch here. Hop in here, go to our features, and toggle that off. And then all of a sudden, my users no longer have that option. They can still make custom views as long as they're for themselves and not for the whole world to see, right? Especially when you have shared environments with multiple clients and that type of stuff, that becomes really important really fast. And so maybe you need that ability to hide that and to kind of remove it from the users. Another really cool integration that we have is actually over here on a different website. This is a fake retail company, and you don't see a lot when you're here, right? You see, hey, this dashboard is filtered to Oklahoma City. It has some sales numbers, etc. It's honestly not the prettiest dashboard in the world, but something that's really cool is this is actually filtered based on where I am geographically. So what we've done here is we actually, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, Chrome is telling me this. We've passed in the latitude and longitude of where I'm accessing the internet right now, which is in Oklahoma. And we've passed those into the dashboard as parameters and used those to filter down this dashboard to where I'm at. And so the use cases for this can actually be really cool. With a retail client, for instance, maybe I have a store that I'm walking into and I'm pulling this up on my iPad. How cool is that, right? Like I'm seeing the numbers on the store that I'm at without having to touch a filter. So something really cool there that you could dive into. I think it has a lot of use cases. Just a quick sample here. And then the other thing that I wanted to pull up is this scorecard. So obviously you can pull in Tableau dashboards. You can pull in multiple Tableau dashboards on a page. The scorecard functionality here that I've set up is actually the culmination of a lot of different things. There's 6 dashboards across the top. These little tiles, each of those is a dashboard. And then along the bottom, we have a different dashboard. Just clicking down real quick, you can see this one's more detailed. It has bar charts, etc. And so at the top, we have these quick KPIs, right? I can come in here as an executive and say, wow, everything is going really well except this red number for point of sale. And so I can click into that and we'll actually switch the dashboard to the relevant dashboard, load that up, and then instantly I'm diving into my point of sale numbers. I can click up and I can say, oh, but what about bookings? How does that compare? And then instantly dive into that dashboard. All in one really holistic experience. And so just something else that you can kind of bring in. I think in general, just kind of wrapping up, embedded analytics is all about enabling your users in different and exciting ways. And so sometimes that might be something like saving them a filter when they're walking into a store, but it could easily be something more, something like this, where we're diving into dashboards without having to go around to 7 different links. whatever you can do to kind of lower that barrier of entry, to make things easier for your users, and to really just drive it home for them, it's going to help adoption, which helps you look like a winner, look like a pro. It really drives home that embedded use case. And so with that, you can check out any of these demos, by the way, at portals.underworks.com. You can contact us there. You can ask me questions, whatever you need. Our blog is full of information about how we've done some of these from a technical standpoint. And you can obviously just email me as well, whatever you helps there. I do see that there's some questions. If we want to take those real quick, Jeff.
Yep. Yeah, let's go ahead and work on that first.
So the first one I'll let you handle there is, will we get a recording of this meeting?
Yep. Yeah, that's it's being recorded, and it should be available on the Tableau YouTube later, maybe today, if not sometime the next day or two.
Usually it's by end of day.
Cool. All right, and then Sandeep has a question. How would you balance driving users to consume content on a web page via an embedded Tableau versus driving users to Tableau server to consume content? Sandeep, I always tell people, let the report consumers consume it in the embedded environment, and then send your developers to Tableau. In my case, that usually tends to be the easiest route, right? You don't want to give people 2 URLs and say, look at this one thing here, look at this other thing over here. And so for us, the report consumers usually go to the consumption page, the embedded analytics page. And then the developers, they have to go back to Tableau for setting things like permissions or publishing dashboards, whatnot. And so a lot of times that's where they end up being. And then they might even consume the content on the dashboard itself, but they go back to Tableau for kind of the administrative tasks.
So we have a question also from Gwen Jones. She says, we use both Tableau and QuickBase. I have many of my Tableau reports on QuickBase dashboards. Is there a way for the user to authenticate to Tableau server when they log into QuickBase? We set up the trusted server for QuickBase on our Tableau server. Did not make a difference if the user has to log into Tableau server when they open the Tableau report.
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in on that. So I'm not super familiar with QuickBase itself, but you should be able to set up a single sign-on experience between the two. Trusted tickets should absolutely automatically log the user into Tableau. If you have that user already logged into QuickBase, then they'll just be logged into both places. That works really well. It does require you getting a token from Tableau server and then putting that as part of the embed URL. Another route that I see people take a lot is using an SSO solution like OAuth or SAML is probably more common, where it goes out to a third-party system for authentication. Something like Okta or OneLogin are very common SAML systems. And most of the time organizations have those, and you just have to tie into those with things like Tableau server or QuickBase.
Yeah, that's similar to what we've done. We have a single sign-on application that does the authentication and then works with, and it actually sits in front of our application. And then so when they're logged into the application, they're authenticated, and then it pulls up and sends that token over to Tableau so that they never log into Tableau directly.
Neil has a question here. Does the trusted ticket process work with Tableau Online? Neil, the answer to that is no. It works great with Tableau server. With Tableau Online, you will need SAML, SSO of some sort. We also have a question, what are the best practices for data sources? Should they be embedded versus separate Tableau data sources, live versus extract, and how do the options affect performance? It's definitely more of a generic Tableau question versus embedded, but I I usually tell people unless you have a good reason to, extracts are going to be faster than live. Sometimes that's not the case if you have something like Snowflake as a database. Most of the time, extracts are going to be your best bet, though. Embedded versus separate published data sources, it really depends on reusability. And then also, I recommend separate data sources if you are using row-level security, just so it's one more upstream. Robert, Jeff, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would say embedded data sources are a little bit faster, but in general, we try and drive everybody to use published data sources for reusability is more than anything else. But if you absolutely need the highest performance, then an embedded data source is going to be just a little bit faster.
I agree.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then if we have time for one more, and then we'll probably pass it over. John N. asked if there's a performance difference between embedded analytics versus going straight to Tableau server. And the answer to that is slightly, depending on your setup. Obviously, there's a second web page load. Usually that's very minimal. It's sub-second in most of our implementations, but there is some processing there of, hey, we're loading another web page. You can add things to your Tableau dashboard on rendering in an embedded analytics that can make it slower. Like maybe you're adding a bunch of filters once it loads the page. But natively, it should be very, very comparable unless you're doing some extra kind of layers on top, like filtering when the dashboard loads.
Okay, I don't know, Jeff, do we have time for one more?
Yeah, and we've got a couple in the chat as well that we maybe pick up, but let's just do one more and then we'll pick up the others at the end.
Cool, yeah, so coding technologies, what coding technologies are used for integrating Tableau dashboards? Any preferred list, if any? So Tableau's just base embedding libraries are going to be JavaScript based for the embedding side, the client side, like in my browser, things happening. You can integrate with their REST APIs as well. We do that with ours. The REST APIs are going to require some kind of server-side language. So that could be something like PHP, which is what we use, or it could be something like Python, or even C# and ASP.NET. There's a lot of different things out there for the server side. But yeah, on the front end, it's going to be JavaScript based.
Yeah, we use JavaScript on the front end, and our back end, just because of different, is all Rails. So the back end stuff is, for the most part, Ruby, and for the heavy lifting, Java. All right, on to the next one. Thanks, Derek. That was good. Interesting stuff. Maybe a couple of things that I want to talk to you about. So anyway, Graham, I think you're up.
Sure.
So Derek, you may need to stop sharing first. Yep.
Let me grab the screen. Okay, you can see the slide.
Yep, there we go. We can see it now.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So my name's Graham Wiggins. I'm an analytics product manager at Jagger. I'm going to be talking to you today about our Explore data feature that we're launching in the process of launching. And it's we're embedding our data and embedding it within our application using this new feature.
Hey,
So,
your audio is just a little bit choppy there.
Okay. Let me. I was on a VPN to do a demo later, but I'll drop the VPN and.
There you go.
Is that better? What's the same? Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, that came in okay.
Yep.
Okay. So hopefully a few things that may be of interest to people on the call today. So as Jeff mentioned before, the previous embedded user group, Ruhab from Tableau, gave a good intro and past data to the functionality what I can do. I'm going to talk today about how to embed it into our application. So there's a few points which hopefully will be interesting and relevant to you. So how we've positioned Ask data for our embedded audience, some challenges you may face along the way in getting it set up, some implementation considerations, and hopefully what is to come from Ask data in the future. So in terms of the agenda, I'm just going to quickly talk about who we are at Jagger, give a bit of background about analytics at Jagger, and then the meat of the presentation is talking about our Explore data feature. I may have to drop the demo if my VPN is causing issues, but and then hopefully given some time at the end for a Q&A. So Jagger, we are a cloud-based procurement technology provider. Our Jagger One platform covers the full end-to-end spectrum of how organizations can manage their spend. So we have part of our solution covers the upstream strategic procurement activities such as contract management, performance, online RFP, RFQs, and auctioning. We have downstream P2P, so procure-to-pay solutions. So that's your kind of online e-procurement shopping cart experience, as well as an invoicing capability. And we also have some supply chain execution solutions for direct materials, so things like inventory management and supply chain collaboration tools. So these are all part of our cloud-based solutions, and data from all of these modules is available for our end users to analyze within our analytics layer of the application, which I'll talk to more about in a second. Just a little bit more about Jagger. So we are a global leader in our space. So we have locations dotted around the globe, clients globally, across multiple industry verticals. We've got a large user base and a big number of suppliers registered against our managed supply network. So just a bit of kind of scope-wise what we look like. I talked about those verticals, so these are just a selection of some of them and some of the logos that that work with us. Yeah, so industries from manufacturing, life sciences, education, public sector, healthcare, CPG, retail, to name a few. And I'm sure there's several kind of logos in there that you recognise. So yeah, large multinational companies, as well as working with some smaller organisations as well. I mentioned we're a leader in our space. You don't just have to take my word for it. That we have been recognised by several industry analysts. So in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for strategic sourcing and P2P, we're a leader in that quadrant. And then other analysts like Forrester, Spend Matters, and IDC are also different accreditations from them. So that's a little bit about Jagger as a company. So I mentioned at the start, my role as an analytics, so I'm an analytics product manager at Jagger, and my role is I'm responsible for solving our clients' data and analytics problems. So we embed Tableau into our application. And so we provide our users with that analytics solution fully within our online cloud-based suites. Within the analytics part of our solution, we allow users to create data sources, consume, customize standard dashboards and reports, as well as conduct self-service analysis. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of some of those areas. So in terms of the data source creation, so I mentioned before, data coming from the rest of our platforms, from all the different individual modules, is made available to our end users. So we have what we call our data source manager solution, where we layer this on top of our standard reporting schema. It's kind of a SQL GUI, so you can you've got some drag and drop functionality to drag in tables and joins, and ultimately the end result of this, it publishes out a published data source up to Tableau server. So I mentioned we do have several standard data sources that we provide as part of our product, but end users can also build their own data sources using the underlying tables in that reporting schema. We look at our end users in terms of different personas and how they like to consume data in different formats. So we try and provide different access points for our end users. So we have our embedded Tableau visualizations. So from a dashboard point of view, sort of multifaceted, sort of visually rich dashboards that cover each of our functional areas. And this is a screenshot of one of our applications at the demo site with dummy data. But yeah, the modules along the side, that would be where you'd run your online sourcing events, etc. And then the analytics option at the bottom is where you can launch your dashboards or list of reports or our explore data feature, which I'll come on to in a second. We also have sort of more traditional reports, sort of more one-dimensional grid-based, still using Tableau. There's pros and cons of that. As I'm sure most of you are aware if you try and do some more traditional reporting, but we do provide a form of that capability within our solution. Alongside those reports, we also provide the user to use the Tableau web edit functionality. This is where they can take the standard reports, take it into the Tableau web edit experience, and then they can modify and change and add dimensions, add filters, basically do whatever they want to it and save it, and then they can create private reports off the back of what they've created. But we recognize there's a problem in terms of well, something we're not quite solving or weren't solving previously. That self-service data exploration experience, and we see two of our kind of main personas, how that they would want to be able to self-service explore their data. So from an executive point of view, they typically rely on pre-built dashboards or KPI reports to answer sort of a set of predefined questions. But if they were to have ad hoc questions, they would typically have to request a new dashboard or KPI be created, or for an analyst to run a report for them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have analysts. So I showed you before how analysts could take an existing report into web edit, which is a useful feature, but they would have a more difficult route to create kind of greenfield analysis. So if they wanted to start from a blank page and just start analyzing the data themselves. So they're the problems we were facing. And that's where we introduced our Explore Data feature. So what our Explore Data feature covers, it allows end users to access Tableau web edit and Ask Data features in a single location. And what we believe it enables a lower barrier of entry for self-service analysis for that executive type persona by allowing them to use Ask Data. And if you weren't on the previous embedded user group where Ruhad demoed Ask Data, and if you're not aware what it is, it's a natural language querying capability. So basically you can type in questions, ask questions of your data, and you get answers in the form of visualization. So a real kind of easy to use tool to get your answers. And then from an analyst point of view, Explore Data enables them to start brand new analysis more easily and access the data sources rather than reports to be able to start conducting their analysis. And they have the option to use that web edit functionality, or if they wanted to use Ask Data and its sort of ease of use experience, they have that option as well. So in terms of what our Explore Data feature looks like, so we it's another tab in our application, and we provide a list of data sources, and actually within that data source manager feature I showed previously, that's how you configure which data sources are available to users in this area. So make sure they're kind of accredited or kind of signed off data sources. There's ability, that kind of governance step. But once it's in here, users will have a list of data sources and an option to start an Ask Data session or a web edit session, and it will appear in the window on the side. So it should hopefully start running. No. Okay, that was meant to be good. So I'm going to quickly see if I can dive in and show you.
Yeah, Graham, you might want to stop your video if you're bandwidth constrained. Stop your video, and then maybe the VPN will work better.
Let me try that.
Did we lose him?
No, I'm still here, just trying to load it up. Apologies. Oh, hopefully he's still in. Okay, that doesn't do working.
I'm not getting any audio on Graham.
I think he's still trying to get the VPN going.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. And now I did have this as a GIF in case my demo didn't work, but that doesn't appear to be working either. Okay, I'll go through the presentation, and then at the end, I'll see if I can get the demo working. Yeah, I mean, the demo was to show you how the Ask data inside our application. So yeah, as I say, if you've not seen it before, you have a search box, a text box, which you can just start typing questions. And Ask data intelligently tries to understand what you're asking and will produce visualizations as a result. And like I said, the other option for our end users is to launch a web edit session where they can use the full Tableau online web edit experience to drag and drop and create their own visualizations themselves. But the whole idea being a single location where, like I say, those executives can start their analysis by asking questions, or those analysts can start their analysis at the data source level and start that kind of greenfield analysis. Just also mention as well, on our dashboards, our users can also start an Ask data session from there as well. So on the Tableau toolbar at the bottom, if this dashboard has a data source that's enabled for Ask data, they can launch it from there. So just another access point for users to access Ask data. So just to talk about a few of the sort of considerations, challenges, and where we hopefully see Ask data going in the future. Some of the implementation considerations. So I mentioned Ask data, you can type questions and it will get your answers. But there is a degree of kind of user expectation management, I guess, in terms of users shouldn't expect it to be like Google. So you can't just type anything you want and Google will go off and work out what you're talking about. And the kind of difference between Ask Data and Google is the fact that Ask Data is a natural language querying generation tool rather than a natural language search tool. So that being said, Ask Data is pretty intelligent and it does understand quite a few sort of language concepts. So you can type in things like last year, earliest, most popular, and it will understand what you're saying and convert that into a query. But the general point is the more kind of ambiguity you put into your question, the sort of higher chance that Ask Data won't be able to understand what you're asking it. So yeah, the kind of concept is trying to use analytical speech rather than conversational speech. So it's yeah, rather than typing full-on sentences, just sort of smaller, kind of shorter, more succinct sentences to get your answers. And that's that kind of point about learning how to ask questions the right way. And I find it's, I have that kind of experience with Amazon Alexa. I find myself asking a question to Alexa and it doesn't give me the answer that I want until I ask it in a slightly different way, and then I get the answer. But next time around, I kind of understand how Alexa works or what it's expecting, so I can sort of query my change my question to suit to make sure Alexa picks it up. So similar kind of concept for Ask Data. The other consideration is around data source curation. So ensuring that your data sources are kind of set up to allow Ask Data questions to be answered in the most optimal way. So I mentioned Ask Data is intelligent in terms of it'll understand when you say something like what's the earliest or last year, but to do that it does need your data to be, if it's a date field, it needs to be configured as a date field. And there's things like if your field has it's configured to be a currency field, you can ask Data, you can use terms like the most or kind of cheapest and things like that. So there's ways you can configure your data source to allow Ask Data to utilize its full intelligence. And there's a few white papers by Tableau which cover this topic, which are quite useful to kind of look through. And the third point here is about managing synonyms. So this is kind of linked to data source curation, but this is where you can actually add kind of colloquialisms or your synonyms of dimensions and members of dimensions. So if you've got the raw dimension name might be very long-winded, you can add kind of what your business terms are. So how someone in your business would describe that dimension. So it might be you might have category level 1 is the raw data. Your business might call that commodity. So you can add synonyms so that Ask Data will know. You can type in commodity and it will know which field to look up. And then things like within dimensions themselves, again, you can add synonyms. So things like you can shorthand things like, I don't know, if someone had California as a member, you could add synonyms for like Cali or CA and things like that, so they can pick up that as you type it. And just a little bit around the versioning within Tableau when Ask Data was released and when we were able to use it in our embedded situation, because we weren't able to use it off the bat. So Ask Data was released by Tableau in their 2019.1 version. So we use trusted ticket authentication here at Jagger to authenticate between our application and the Tableau server. But there were some issues related to that in the initial release of Ask Data. They were solved in 2019.3.3. We upgraded to 2019.4.5 when some additional enhancements were added to allow us to allow you to control whether AST data or which data sources AST data was turned on for. So prior to that version, by default, all data sources on your server would have had AST data enabled, and we wanted some more control around that. So we waited till that 19.4.5 release until it was available. We were tied into our kind of release schedules alongside our application, so we wanted to wait a little bit longer because there were some additional enhancements that are added to 2020.1.3. That was around, so I showed you before where you can see AST data on your Tableau toolbar at the bottom. At the moment, that's shown on all dashboards which have a data source enabled for AST data. Currently, we don't have control of when you see that in our application, but we would do if we'd upgraded to 2020.1.3. And at the moment, in our version of AST data, in the embedded version, we don't have a save control option, so we don't have the option to choose whether our end users can save or save as that AST data session. So that's just kind of give you a bit of an idea about if you're on one of these earlier versions, but you're thinking about using AST data, maybe think about upgrading to one of the more recent versions before you do jump in and use AST data. And then to kind of close out is talking about our vision for using AST data in the future. So where we would like to use it and where hopefully the enhancements on the Tableau side will come. I'll preface this as well to say Tableau have been really great working with us to help get AST data set up in our application and talking with us around where our feedback to them in terms of where so some of these points on here, as well as some support on some of those earlier considerations I mentioned. So they've helped pull together some kind of onboarding guides for some of our users and advice for people to create data sources. So they've been really helping, holding our hand, getting to where we are with our Explore data feature. But in terms of where we'd like to see AST data go in the future, the first one is we'd like to see analytics everywhere in natural language. So a kind of true kind of no UI solution. So that's really talking about being able to embed AST data into a smart assistant. So those less technical people, so they wouldn't even have to log into our analytics area. We have a smart assistant in our application. It's persistent. It's always on the page available to them, to our users. We want to be able to embed AST data into that as well. The second point is around AST data as part of your wider workflow of analysis. And what I mean by that, at the moment, when you, if you wanted to take what you had in AST data and sort of convert that, transition it into a web edit session, there's several clicks before you're able to get into that web edit area. So the kind of scenario is you've done some initial questions in AST data, but then you want to add more complexity to that visualization or potentially pull it together into a dashboard. You currently have to go through a process of saving that workbook, then going back before you can then kind of convert it into a web edit session. So a few sort of steps into that process. We'd like to see that much smoother transition where you're effectively in AST data and then just transitioning straight into converting what you had into a web edit session. Like to see some more sort of sophistication around the question and answering ability. So some more of that kind of Google style search experience. As I said, it's a different use case to Google in terms of it's a sort of natural querying language rather than a search language. But some of that kind of search you type sort of finishing your question for you type Google experience would be useful to see. And I believe Tableau are looking into that whole kind of how you enter questions into AST data and improvements on that. So looking forward to hopefully some improvements there going forwards. And I'll put more complex visualizations created. That doesn't necessarily mean complex for complex sake, but that's kind of just being able to answer more complicated questions. So if you're asking kind of, if you're wanting potentially to build some more table calculations or some different visualization types, that's again, we're hoping there's going to be some improvements going forwards on the Tableau side. And the last point around sort of more assistance on that data source curation. So I mentioned there's a few things that you need to be aware of when you're creating your data sources and setting them up at the moment. At the moment, from a synonym point of view, you have to add them per data source. Again, that's something that Tableau are looking to be able to provide a more bulk experience to manage that. And I think even in 2020.2, the data roles functionality in Tableau can help with that, but we'd like to see that go further. And then even sort of further than that is to do some of this curation assistance more smartly. So Tableau to use more sort of artificial intelligence, machine learning to help suggest or even update and change your data source types, etc., to be better used within AS data. So yeah, that was it. Happy to take some questions if we still have time. Bob, Jeff, I went slightly long, I think because of the issues on the demo in the middle, but so happy to you can move past if you want, or I can take some questions now if there's any have come in.
Yeah, I think we can probably do some if there's some there. So I'm interested in how you're handling synonyms today. I mean, that's something that I've been looking at, but it's a problem because every one of our clients is a separate site and there's no API for updating synonyms.
Yes.
At this point, it's a problem.
Yes, that is the challenge. That's so at the moment we're having to do it on a site-by-site basis, but have been in conversation with Tableau, and they're looking to see if they can support a way to do that, even prior to an API being available to some more sort of back-end updates. So yeah, we don't have a good solution at the moment.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, the only thing that I can think of at the moment is adding elements to the data source that are essentially copies of one another. So your data source just has, a calculation where two things are set. So.
Yeah, and like I said, if you do, I don't know if you're on 2020.2 yet, but some of the data role functionality there allows you to kind of set up synonyms for that data role, then apply that to multiple data sources. I'm not sure if you can do that across sites or not, but that's certainly a bit more at scale.
Yep. Yeah, no, data roles will help, but it's more that's synonyms across data sources within a site, not deploying synonyms at scale across sites. So progress, and and it's still early days, so this is all pretty cool stuff. All right. Do we have any other? I don't
pass it back over to Jeff now. I think we are running a little bit behind, Jeff. So.
Yep.
Cool.
All right.
I'll stop sharing and over to you, Jeff.
All right. Thanks. Now I got to reconfigure screens. All right, there we go. So just kind of dig in here on the interesting thing kind of is how we used Tableau Public, but also the visual that we ended up creating to support that. So I was having a, relatively normal day and get a call from our VP and, sort of, they, do you have a few minutes? And of course it's the VP. So of course I have a few minutes. And so has this thing where there's a new predictive algorithm that our data science team put together, and they were building a React web app, and it was taking a long time, and I honestly didn't look that great, didn't have a lot of interactivity. And so the marketing team that was getting ready to push this out was like, yeah, we don't like it. So who can help with this? And so he said, can we take a look? And I said, oh, sure. And then I asked the dreaded question of, are there deadlines coming up with this? And then that conversation kind of, because things flowed downhill, rapidly became essentially the same conversation with my lead visualization developer, and we followed the same path to get to, yeah, there are deadlines, and it's like, as soon as you can do it. And oh, by the way, that means literally as soon as you can do it. So once we got past the fact that it was going to be kind of a big pain in the neck and all hands on deck, it turned out to be a really interesting project. Timelines, the initial meeting was, Tuesday afternoon that we were going to have to do something. Wednesday afternoon, we had the first meeting with the project team and realized that, they've been working on this React JS thing for probably a week or two at this point. We met with them on Wednesday afternoon. By 9 p.m. Wednesday night, we had replicated all of the work that they had spent weeks creating, and also solved all of the core UI problems that they were complaining about that they weren't able to address. So, in a matter of 5 hours using Tableau, we were able to replicate what they hadn't been able to do in, a week or two of fumbling around trying to build their own web app to do it. And, once it was sort of oh, really? You guys, that was fast. Well, now that I know that you guys are fast, I have all of these 1,000 other little things that I can think about and would like to produce. So we then spent the next 3-4 days working on it and got to essentially the all but final version the following Monday after, working all weekend. And then over the next couple of weeks, we ended up doing some iterative revisions and checking with things and going back and forth and figuring out what we were going to do. And the end result is here. This is just the Tableau portion. That link below actually has the link to show everything inside of our content management system. So that's the end result. Now I've got this later in the slides as well, if anybody wants to take a look at that URL and look at it for themselves. So parameters that we were given when we had to work with this stuff. We had delimited text files coming in as the data source. That was being what was output by the models. The information was going to be coming in daily. We were getting the information directly from the Johns Hopkins curated feeds, much like, well, most everybody was doing. Tableau had their own version of it, but because it was going through our data science team first, using the Tableau versions really wasn't an option. The other thing that once we got into it is we found out that the way our internal content management system works, we were limited to 970 pixel width, which was restrictive. That was something that definitely is less screen space than we're used to working with, but it was just a restriction. So we were constantly battling with how do we display information quickly and get it sorted out so that it all looks consistent and good and is really going to work within those parameters. The other thing was, oh, by the way, we're going to get out and we're going to blast this out on Facebook and Twitter and everything else, and it has to be truly publicly open. And that was the one that was going to be a challenge, because our typical world is PHI, PII, very restrictive, limited access, strong validation, auditing, all of that sort of stuff because of HIPAA and other restrictions in the other countries that we work in. So it wasn't going to work within our normal system. So how are we going to do that? So the first option was core-based system. So guests are an option, but there are problems with enabling a guest account for something like this. Because of our multi-tenant environment, setup-wise and things, we don't ever want guest account to be turned on. To get around that, we turn the guest account off at the cluster level to make sure that nothing accidentally happens during part of the onboarding process when we bring a new client on board. So using one of our systems really wasn't going to be an option. So then it was like, well, what about Tableau Online? That does all of those things, but no guest accounts on Tableau Online. It's all named user accounts. So even though Tableau was willing to work with us on it, because everybody was, we were in the period where everybody was going fast on COVID, and the Tableau was really very helpful in providing guidance and assistance and all of those things, but it just wasn't going to work. So what's the next option? And we started looking at Tableau Public, which is something that my team uses for their own things, but it is definitely not something that we had ever done in a production environment using corporate assets. Looking at it, scalability is good, patterns are good because my team uses it for their own things, and guest access is obviously there because everything in Tableau Public is fully open. So started looking at that and figuring out, is that going to work? And there are some issues with it. There's no live connections, no real database connectivity, and generally speaking, there's updating anything that you're going to use requires manual intervention, right? If you've got to update your data source, somebody has to open up desktop or the Tableau Public client, do everything there and publish it. So we didn't love that idea, but it was a possibility. It's just that somebody on my team or somewhere else would have to be detailed, and it would be every day somebody'd have to go in and do it. So that's not fun, but it was a possibility. Digging in a little bit deeper, Google Sheets is actually available as an online system, and it can be scheduled so that it refreshes once a day. So now we've got an option. That was something that was a lot more viable. We just had to figure out a way to make sure that the Google Sheets got updated with the latest information. The other thing that was great about Tableau Public and turned out to be very important is it's the current version of Tableau, which given our scale, we're behind the times always to an extent. We just can't get our 6 production clusters up to date immediately, whereas Tableau Public is there. And in this case, we used a lot of set actions, parameter actions, buffer calculations, lots of different things that wouldn't have been possible to do with our actual version. So looking at Google Sheets, you know, easy to paste data into it, but there are some limitations. The size of sheet that Tableau Public will read is limited. We ran into that kind of in our first go round where the way the data was set up, it was very denormalized. So that required us to kind of step back, restructure the data, make it more normalized so that everything was smaller and then everything worked great. You know, I read through the documentation on Google Sheets. There's an API, so it was time to get working. And I started building the data pipeline while hipster Viz Ninja got going on things. So that's Sean Miller, who's one of the guys that works on my team. You can follow him on Twitter and see a lot of the stuff that he's doing. He's just an amazing guy when it comes to developing the visuals. All right, so working on getting all of that stuff updated programmatically. Essentially, this is my import section from the Python code that I wrote to write things. The important things really here are that processing section. Pandas is pretty normal in terms of pulling things in and working with data frames. Same with NumPy. The things that were a little bit different was that gspread and then getting the Google service account information set up. Because one of the things that you have to do with Google Sheets is have everything identified, or you have to sign in with an identity, and you don't necessarily want to stick your Google account or Gmail account or whatever into your code, but there is an ability to create service accounts for Google Sheets, which is ending up what we did. So we used gspread to populate things, and then the Google libraries. And I'm sure there are libraries in other languages. I just happen to be using Python to do the display of the information, or the loading of the information. And then down at the bottom, kind of the interesting thing, something that I had not knew for me anyway, is there's a MS Teams library for Python, so that every time this process runs, it sends a card into one of our Teams channels. And now that everybody's remote, essentially we live in Teams. So using Teams as our notification mechanism was very helpful, just because we can go look for that information the same place where we look for everything else. In general, just kind of a high-level pseudocode stuff. We ended up using our internal Git repository as the storage for the data that comes out of our data science platform. So my code goes to GitHub, reads that information, loads it into a Pandas data frame where I do some sorting and formatting, getting data types right, Then from that data frame, I call it the Google Sheets, and write out there. And then, you know, assuming everything actually worked, notification goes out through Teams so that my team, when we get in every morning, we can just go up, pull up that card and make sure that the dates look right. And there's some kind of overview information about the processing. And then the end result was this link, and then I'll go ahead and hopefully bring that up, but I'm going to have to all right, I'm going to stop share for a second and share Firefox. And so here it is embedded in the tool. There's some cool things in here that we've done. For example, we can go in here and go Johnson County, Kansas, where I'm located, and it's going to go in and it's going to cycle down and not just pull up Johnson County, Kansas, but all the other counties that are within a 100-mile radius of Johnson County, Kansas, because typically on these things, what you're looking at is a regional area. You know, you want to look at things at a county level, but what you really care about is all of the counties that are in the vicinity. We also have things in here where we can search by metro area, and I can search by Kansas City Metro as well. And then I can go into Johnson County, and then I can look and I get details about the county, and I can pop up and I can see how things are going. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going on behind this. And like I say, it's updated every day. It's automated and uses a lot of new functionality from Tableau that we frankly couldn't have done if we had done this with our own internal system. All right, so we'll go back to the presentation. All right, just some lessons learned for us in terms of this thing. Yeah, there's lots of different options out there. Initially, we didn't think that this was, we didn't know how we were going to solve this problem. So kind of looking around and picking Public made a lot of sense, but it was something that was new and different. We were really able to move fast because of the capabilities that that gave us within the limits of the size of the data that you could bring in. One of the things of working with the team that was used to building everything on their own is they wanted things to work sort of exactly how they wanted it to work and look exactly how they wanted it to look. Within Tableau, there are some limitations. You could do a ton of stuff, but you are still within the application. So there are some issues as far as that goes. So getting them to sort of back off from everything has to be exactly how I think it should be, which actually got them to the point where they had spent weeks getting to a place that we got in about 5 hours. And just getting them to live within some of the concepts that drive the way Tableau works. The other thing that was big for us was mobile was massively more popular for this as a publicly exposed resource as opposed to our normal application development, which is really driven towards analysts and their use cases. So anyway, pretty cool project, really fast, and thankfully we didn't all get burned out, but it was fun and it was useful and it was definitely different from some of the other things that we've done. So I guess I will stop it there. We're coming close to the hour, so just see if there are any questions out there.
Jeff, there was one user asked if you were able to use user filtering with Tableau Public to do row level security. I don't know how you would, but.
Yeah, I mean, Tableau Public is truly public. I mean, it genuinely, truly, and utterly public. So there is no such thing as security for anything that you put on public. I mean, even I've seen people who've done some things with it, but the reality is that you can then just download the workbook and remove it, and you know, you haven't really done anything. So you can sort of simulate row level security, but if anybody has any ingenuity, they can immediately get around it.
Anybody else? I think you're getting off easy today.
Yep.
Mr. James, it would appear that way.
All right, so we're still trying to, so kind of moving on from the presentation, we're still sorting through what we're going to do about Q4 meeting. We'll definitely have something. What we're trying to, we still are not sure at this point of what's happening with the virtual Tableau conference. So we will either do something on our own, or we will do it in concert with virtual Tableau conference. So once we get that sorted out, then we'll get a date and we'll let everybody know what's going on with that. We are still looking for participants for Q4 and going forward. So if you are at all interested, please let us know, send us your email accounts, and we'd be happy to follow up with you.
Sure, and I would add to that, if everyone stays active on the forum, I think that'd be a really good thing. So we're really looking to grow participation, to grow the content, and deliver sort of a richer experience to the group and share our common type challenges is in this space for sure.
Yep. I mean, Bob and I know what interests us, but what we need to know is what interests you. And so that's really where we could use the feedback.
So there was a question on the URL forms. Chris, I will send you that here in a minute.
Yeah, and it may have changed around a little bit with the migration to the new platform, and there's still some breakup between the forums and the splash stuff. That's actually in two separate places, even in the new system. So that gets a little bit confusing at times.
Okay, I think with that said, I think we're ready to wrap it up on time. Do you have anything else, Jeff? Other than that, I think we're.
Nope. I think that's it. Thanks
All
everybody
right,
for attending.
Thank you, everybody, and please remember to stay active and communicate to us. We appreciate it.